the work that I and you and other detransitioned women are doing is like, I think one of the most important things in the world right now. I think this is one of the most important battles. This is, I think, the largest medical scandal in American history, perhaps.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth Chesak, current president of Women's Declaration International USA and the facilitator of the WDI USA Desisted and Detransitioned Women's Caucus. On December 4th, 2024, the Supreme Court of the United States heard oral arguments in the case of United States versus Skermeti. At issue is a Tennessee ban on child medicalization, often referred to by the euphemism of gender-affirming care. While WDI USA had filed amicus briefs before the Supreme Court before, the previous briefs only concerned the question of whether the court should take up a case. Skermeti marked the first time we presented the radical feminist critique of gender identity before the Supreme Court directly, and we're very proud to have done so. And I've included a link to our amicus brief in the description below, so please do go check that out. And so on that day in December, people from around the United States and across the political spectrum gathered outside the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. While we may not agree on other matters, we were united by our dedication to protecting children and defending reality. I was fortunate enough to attend that rally. It was a historic moment, and as someone who is a desister, that is, a survivor of the gender identity cult who did not medicalize, it meant a lot to see how far we've come in this fight. We expect the Supreme Court to issue their ruling this summer, so stay tuned. While at the rally, I struck up a conversation with a young woman named Claire, whom I'll be chatting with today. So without further ado, here is today's interview with Claire Abernathy.
My name is Claire. I'm a 20-year-old detransitioner from Texas originally. I was assaulted at 11 years old by a classmate, and the sort of feelings that I had about that were misinterpreted by therapists that I had and by people that I met on the internet as so-called gender dysphoria. And I was already like a tomboyish kid and same-sex attracted, and so I was sort of primed for it. And yeah, I went through early puberty. I was just barely on the line for being considered precocious puberty. It's considered precocious if it starts at 7. Mine started at 8. And so obviously that led to discomfort as well. And all this sort of accumulated, and it was a perfect storm, I guess. And yeah, by right after I turned 12, I came out as trans. And at first, my parents were a little bit hesitant about it. They were doing research of their own, and they came across the studies saying that like 70–80% of kids desist from gender dysphoria if allowed to grow uninterrupted into adulthood. And that was sort of what they wanted to do, but I was very persistent that this was my truth and this is what I wanted. And so they sought help from a therapist who just made them feel like idiots, basically, made them feel like bigots, told them that essentially that they were killing me, that they were abusing me by not immediately affirming that I was born in the wrong body and I had a male gender spirit trapped in me. And yeah, by my 15th birthday, I was nearly a year on testosterone and had a double mastectomy. I needed to feel like the adults in my life were the authorities over my life, and that like they knew what they were doing and were in control of the situation. And also I needed strong women in my life who like defied traditional gender norms and were happy and comfortable being women.
Mm-hmm. Did you not have a lot of examples of those growing up?
No, I lived in a very Catholic town in Texas. All of the women I knew were like waspy, uh, like very traditional housewives and teachers, and I essentially grew up in the 60s. By the time I was 16, I learned what a breast reduction. And
Oh,
um,
wow. Okay. So after the surgery.
like a year after the surgery, a year and a half, a girl on my high school volleyball team got a breast reduction, and it was like gossip around the school. And that's what I learned. That's where I learned it from. And I realized that that's what I wanted, not a mastectomy. I had uh, G cup breasts when I was 14 and had them removed. They removed 10 pounds of tissue from me, and I was 120 pounds at the time. So it would have been like a medically necessary thing. I had real medical problems as a result of my development, my early puberty,
Mm-hmm.
and um, that was just. I remember telling people even before I had the mastectomy that if I had been born with B, C cup breasts that could be that could be bound, I wouldn't have gotten the surgery. And I remember telling my therapist that, and she wasn't like, "Have you considered a breast reduction?" That was just never on my radar. And um, that's when I realized I had made a mistake, but I didn't. I stopped testosterone when I was like 16 and a half, and I started going by a different name when the first time I told people I wanted to be called a different name was my 17th birthday party. And but at that time I still identified as non-binary. I don't think I stopped identifying fully until I was like 18 and a half.
What was the reaction when you told people that you wanted to go back to a female name and that this had been a mistake?
Um,
How did your parents react?
I didn't talk to my parents about it. Uh, my parents didn't know I was detransitioning until I told them I was getting a reconstruction.
Okay.
Um, I mean, they had suspicions because I was clearly off of testosterone and dressing more feminine and going by my Claire is a pseudonym. My real name is more gender neutral. Um, so I think they thought I was just non-binary now until I told them I was getting a breast reconstruction and wanted to be a woman again. And after that, I think I think they were scared of offending me. So they kind of just waited for me to talk about it. And now my mom's a TERF. So it's great.
Yay! When we met at the Skirmetti rally, one of the things that we got talking about was that, I believe it was a year ago, correct me if I'm wrong, you actually testified in opposition to an Ohio bill that would ban child medicalization, but you've since changed your mind, and I just wondered if you could talk through that thought process behind your change of mind.
So when I detransitioned, I was still very deep in the ideology of it. I was ready to accept that. I guess it was easier to accept that it was real evidence-based healthcare, and I just felt I was just a outlier, that it was like my fault, I guess. It was easier for me to blame myself than to grasp the enormity of the problem. Um, and I really believed that there were kids that it was necessary for. I thought that there was issues with the system and like our assessment protocols, but I believe that there were kids who needed it still. But after the WPATH files came out, well, it had the CAS review and the WPATH files had been out for a while before that, but I didn't read them. After reading them and looking more into other like reviews of the evidence that were coming back and saying, no, there's actually very little evidence backing up this. Sorry, my camera is shaking. I'm plugging my phone in. Backing up this kind of protocol, the house of cards came down.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really important perspective for people to hear, because I feel like there's quite a few people. What am I trying to say? I feel like, okay, obviously you have people who are caught up in the gender cult, and then you have the detransitioners, and kind of like a step in between are those who say, well, it wasn't right for me, but it is right for others. And I'm interested in obviously bringing people who are currently in the cult, to the point where they understand that it's not right for anyone. So I'm just very interested in kind of how you deprogram people and how you walk them down those steps to get them to our point of view. And I'm worried that we'll end up at a point in the culture where people say, well, it wasn't right for me, but it is right for others. And I want them to be able to move past that. But I think
Yeah.
it's really hard to come to terms with everything that has happened to you. I mean, I think that's why so many young women go, oh, I'm a quote unquote trans man, and then eventually a few years later they go, oh, I'm non-binary. Like, I knew so many people who did that because I don't think they were quite ready to accept all that had happened to them.
Yeah, I agree. It. I really don't know. I think for me, I had to have all of the realizations that led to me peaking like 10 times at least before I like let myself internalize them.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like an accumulation of like realizing I would never be accepted by the trans community because what happened to me is obviously bad. And so when I talk about it and how bad it was, people, regardless of how many platitudes I put in front, trans people in the cult are like, shut up about this. You're making us look bad. I think what the final straw was getting banned from a detransition subreddit for it was like a pro-trans detransition subreddit for I got banned for sharing the Mayo Clinic's list of potential complications from feminizing HRT when someone asked about potential health
Mhm.
complications
And
from
those
feminizing
complications
HRT.
include like stroke, don't they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
blood clots, multiple kinds of cancer, diabetes, strokes. Yeah,
yeah. They don't want to hear that there are
no,
side effects.
no. I was told I was trying to encourage people to detransition, which it's a detransition subreddit, first off.
Right, right. But still full of people who semi believe in the ideology.
Very much. There are no detransitioned mods on that subreddit. It's all trans people,
Oh
trans
my god.
identified people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tell me how you found radical feminism.
I always had radical feminist inclinations. Um, I've always like been able to see that women are like subjugated in society and that the way that mainstream feminism goes about trying to resolve that doesn't work and it is like how do I put it? Like geared towards men still. It's about like, oh, let's talk about male victims of assault. Let's talk
Mhm.
about men not being able to express their feelings. It's
Mhm.
feminism. It
Yeah,
should
I
be
feel,
about women,
yeah,
in my view.
and I feel like so much of liberal feminism, it's still just about doing what men want, but
Yeah,
dressing it up in the guise of, oh, this is empowering for women. So they're like,
exactly.
you should have eyeliner so sharp it can cut a man,
Uh,
as the saying goes. But I'm like, you're literally still doing what the men want, which is wearing makeup, but you've told yourself that somehow
it's
you're
radical
speaking it to
somehow.
the man, and I'm like,
Yeah,
there's just such a disconnect.
very much. That you put it perfectly. I found radical feminism on Tumblr. Reading stories from other detransitioned women and like how similar they are to mine was a big part. It was like, well, it's not my fault if all of these other people did the exact same thing. Someone should have seen that. Someone should have noticed that there was an issue long before I ever came around.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I had that realization, I started looking in. I read "Time to Think," the Hannah Barnes's book on the Tavistock Clinic, and I realized there were people who realized that there was a problem, and the systems that they operated under did not let them voice those concerns. They were making too much money, I guess. It's like someone is making all of us detransitioned women in a factory somewhere. We're all so similar. Basically, every time I meet a detransitioned woman, we are immediately best friends because we already know each other's life stories, essentially. Like, nobody stopped us, but like so many people within the system tried to. Like, there are so many doctors who like had these realizations like, oh shit, we're hurting people. We're really harming these kids. And they were silenced, like Jamie Reed and
Mm-hmm.
like the people involved in the Time to Think. Like they just they were silenced.
Could you tell me about your plans for the future, specifically relating to detransition activism?
I'm I'm in communications with a lot of people right now about like I can't go into like the super specifics, but about
Yeah, for sure.
like legal action and about like I might be writing articles for GenSpect on their Substack soon. Um, things are looking really hopeful for me in this area right now. A lot of people are really compelled by my story, and I'm very there's a lot of prospects is what I'm saying. There's not a whole lot of I can't tell you like directly what
Yeah.
I'm gonna do because there's so many paths I could take.
What do you wish you could tell women and girls still caught up in this ideology?
Female social roles are not comfortable, sort of by design, and that doesn't make you not a woman, and that there are
Let's change the social roles.
exactly
Yeah.
change the world, not your
Not
body.
your body. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was directly told it was transition or die, essentially. I was told that my eating disorder and my suicidality and my trauma, my discomfort with my body caused by trauma and early puberty it would all go away. All of the real like societal and mental problems that I had were just because I had a magical gender, male spirit trapped in me. And if I fucked up my endocrine system, cut my body up, that would fix it.